Hello and welcome to another brand new episode of the Pangolin podcast. I'm your host, Toby Jermyn. Thank you very much for joining me. In each episode, I've invited a professional wildlife photographer to imagine themselves in a remote location. Along with their camera gear, they're allowed to bring 5 photographs to hang on the wall of their humble dwelling. Now, 4 of these must be their own, and the final image is one they admire by another photographer. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the images as we talk, but for audio listeners on other platforms, there is a link in the description to a gallery. On today's show.
So no camera tapping, no sensors, no nothing. It's literally me and a pair of binos sitting there watching and hoping that I'm getting the scene. And one of those moments again where when you go up to the camera afterwards and it's just none, got nothing, got nothing, got nothing. Oh yeah, there we go. This is the shot.
My guest today is an internationally acclaimed wildlife and landscape photographer from South Africa. His work blends fine art and natural history using light, atmosphere, and meticulous fieldcraft to tell powerful conservation stories from Africa's savannas to the Arctic and beyond, and to inspire a deeper emotional connection with the natural world. In what must be the peak of every wildlife photographer's career, he was awarded the prestigious Wildlife Photographer of the Year title by the Natural History Museum last year for his haunting image of a brown hyena moving through a Namibian ghost town, a photograph that took him 10 years to create. He is, of course, Wim van den Heever. Wim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Toby. Thank you for having me on the show.
I'm glad we managed to catch you because you've been kind of busy recently, haven't you?
Yeah, I've been running around. Last year was bumper packed, and then obviously going into 2026 is just as bumper packed. Lots of adventures, lots of great photography opportunities, but it obviously leaves a very little window to actually get some stuff done while you're not traveling. So I'm happy we could make this work, and it's really nice to be part of the show. And it's nice seeing you again, my friend.
It's very nice to see you as well. Just tell everybody, you won the biggest photographic competition out there. How many times have you entered Wildlife Photographer of the Year?
So 2011 was my first time, and then obviously been entering it every year, and I've entered it this year again. So it's 15 years that I've been entering the competition. I've been runner-up in categories, and I've placed as a highly commended, etc. But I've never really won a category, and I've never really walked away with anything like I did last year, right? So that was very unexpected and certainly a huge honor as well.
Because you don't know until you're there at the event, which is at the Natural History Museum as well, isn't it?
That's right. It's at the Natural History Museum, and I can promise you, you do not know anything beforehand. In fact, I was completely shocked when the announcement came up, so shocked that I was completely dumbstruck. And, in my mind, I'd already resigned myself to the fact that I'd actually not won the competition. And when they mentioned my name, it was such a shock. I was like, no, guys, you got the wrong guy. It's not me. It's someone else that's won. It's not me.
I want to talk more about this, but let's talk about the image. Here it is. Tell us about the image. Come on.
Yes. So like you said, it took me 10 years to get the picture. It's a picture of a brown hyena, and it's in the desolated, abandoned streets of Kolmanskop with this eerie building in the background and with the fog rolling in and with eerie lights, the whole thing. So that's basically what the picture's about.
And it took you 10 years from the conception to the actual managing to get it. So obviously you go to Namibia a lot, you go to Kolmanskop, and you've got this vision. And this is uniquely in the fact that this was a camera trap, right? You'd set this up as a camera trap because these animals are incredibly shy. You're not going to sit there on the ground, are you? They're not going to come near you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me how you got it together.
Yeah, so I find myself in Namibia quite often photographing, and a lot of the groups that I'm leading, people love photographing Kolmanskop. So I find myself in Kolmanskop quite often. And it's not necessarily a place that I enjoy photographing a lot, mainly because it's got human aspects in it. So I like the real wild places. I like to feel like I'm away from anything human-made. So Kolmanskop is not necessarily for me a place that sticks out as the most pristine place to photograph wildlife in, but that also brings the wildlife photographer out in you. So while I'm busy walking around those streets and I'm seeing droppings, I'm seeing footprints, I'm seeing telltale marks of brown hyena, I realize that there must be the opportunity to photograph a brown hyena in these magnificent setting that you've got here. So that sort of brought about, how can I do this, and what do I need to do? So initially what I did was, because we've got photo permits, I'll try and get into the area a bit earlier in the morning, pre-dawn, or afterwards in the evenings, try and wait before dinner. It's already dark. Nothing. Those animals are just too elusive. They can smell you, they can hear you. There's no ways they're going to be coming in, right? But I knew that there must be a way to try and do this. So, fast forward 1 or 2 years of trying that, then came Will Burrard Lucas with the cam traction system. And I had all the various versions of that. And I had several ones that eventually got tossed and lost in the desert as well, just because they take such a beating out there. And initially I would set up, nothing would go off, it wouldn't work, etc. So it was such a difficult thing. And that's also one of the things that I'd like to just bring to everybody's attention. Camera trapping is by far the most difficult thing I've ever tried to do in my whole life. You need to know where the animal's going to be. You need to know exactly what the lighting is going to be. You need to predict what the situation is going to be like 2 o'clock tomorrow morning, 3 o'clock tomorrow morning, or when the sun comes up, or when there's moon, or when there's wind, or whatever. It's a big, massive desert. How do you even come up to a place? There's no fence post or anything to put my camera down on. How are you going to predict where that animal's going to be? So it was definitely the most difficult thing I've ever tried to do. And I lost a lot of equipment, cameras, flashes, lenses, tripods, you name it, things that just got messed up with sand, because you have those easterly winds in Namibia, and it dumps all this sand on top of the cameras. Everything just gets, it's just a massive, massive headache. So to get this one picture after literally 10 years was just absolutely amazing. And I'm very, very proud to have achieved it. But I don't think people quite realize how much perseverance it took at the end of the day as well.
We've had a couple of people. Obviously, Will Burrard Lucas has been on the podcast as well. He's like his amazing photographs of the melanistic leopard in Kenya. And he's said the same thing. There's so much that can go wrong, and you've just missed the perfect shot. And also, you'll never know that you missed the perfect shot because it didn't happen. It's not like you almost saw it and you go, oh, no. But tell me about the moment when you took the memory card out of your camera, you slap it in the drive, and you go, no, no, no. Wow. Tell me that. Is that how it happened? That's how I imagine it happened.
No, that's not how it happened. What happened was I woke up at 3 o'clock the next morning, or 4 o'clock, somewhere around there. Had to drive back to Kolmanskop to fetch the cameras, to drive back to fetch the guests, and to make sure that I've got everything out of the way before anybody arrived there. So I got to Kolmanskop in the dark, and I think I had 2 or 3 camera traps out that night. Took the cameras, nothing on all the other cameras. And I picked this one camera up and I pressed play. And the camera had triggered 3 times during the night. One blank,
wow.
One blank. And then this picture came up, and I just had one picture.
No.
Did it. I'm
Brilliant.
so happy. And it's difficult to describe the emotion, but I think the first thing that sort of goes through your mind is it's just pure goosebumps, and you look and it's like, oh my God, I did this. I can't believe it. And that's when it sort of really sinks in. It's a really good feeling at that time, because like I said, the amount of effort, the amount of late nights, the amount of early mornings, it's just so difficult. And I can promise anybody that thinks camera trapping is dead easy and walk up to a place and put it down, try it. Right. Please be my guest. Show me wrong.
For those of you who don't know Kolmanskop is like an old mining town that's been deserted, and you can go and photograph there. And most of the famous photographs there are the sand dunes coming through the window, and that's why people go there. So what I particularly love in this is it's a completely unique photograph of a place which is photographed so many times. And I can't think of another species that juxtaposes the ruins of a building than a hyena. Hyenas are always associated, unfairly so, with scavenging, death. It had to be. It's a ghost town with a hyena walking through it. When you saw the image, did you immediately go, that's getting entered? That I'm entering, and I've got a good feeling about this one.
Well, it's a good question. And you've sort of answered it in just what you said, in that hyenas definitely don't have a good reputation when it comes to wildlife photography. It's a sort of misunderstood animal. So I think initially my reaction was that I don't think people would understand the picture. And I was reluctant to enter competitions because of it, because The picture means a lot to me, but I don't think it means the same amount to other people potentially, mainly because it's a hyena. But I sort of stuck to my guns and thought, I hope they can see and understand the effort behind a picture like this, because it's a very, very difficult picture to pull off. I literally have, in 10 years, I've got one picture to show for my efforts. I've got another picture of a jackal, but he's pointed the wrong direction and he doesn't even have a tail, So that's the only other picture I've got in that whole place, yeah.
Tell us about the lighting, because obviously you've got lights around the place. Tell me two things. First, you've got the lighting situation, but you can't predict fog. That's just like the cherry on top, isn't it?
Yeah, so initially the picture was set up for me to photograph it with stars. So I was trying to get, Brian hyena and then potentially get the Milky Way in the shot then as well. So that's how it initially was set up. The light falling on the actual building itself is from a security light, probably about 500 meters away, that's spilling light into the scene. So I need to balance that light with my flashes that I'm potentially want to light up my subject then with, as well as the stars that I'm hoping to get then as well. So I had two flashes and I had them way off to the side. And that meant that I had a very thin strip of light that was just basically lighting where I was hoping that the hyena would be. So it wasn't spilling light onto the building, because that would be too much light onto the building then. So the angle of the flashes in the scene is incredibly difficult to set up so as not to create more problems in the scene, just to actually freeze the moment of that subject moving through the frame. Lots of work, lots of errors, lots of mistakes.
So many different things go wrong. And what was your shutter speed? Because you're hoping for stars, so you've got to leave it open for a certain period of time, then a pulsar flash, and hoping that the hyena's in the right place when the pulsar flash goes off. How did you figure that one out?
The ideal setting is a 30-second exposure. So you want to go 30 seconds, f2.8, ISO 3200. Those are my settings when I'm photographing the Milky Way. But because of the light spilling into the scene, anything more than 15 seconds meant that the building was completely blown out. It was starting to overexpose just way too much. So I had to limit my shutter speed to 15 seconds. So it's 15 seconds, ISO 3200, f2.8. And that gives me a very shallow depth of field where I have to get my subject in exactly that one plane moving through the frame. Otherwise, the subject would be out of focus then. So like I said, a lot of planning and a lot of difficulty went into the picture.
So you've got to figure, when the hyena is coming towards you, in your mind, you're going, what's the average walking speed of a hyena at night through Kolmanskop? Because you've got to set up for 15 seconds, then hope that it continues walking 4 or 5 steps to hit the flash at the right time in the right position. Okay, anybody who thinks camera trapping is easy, I would fill your boots, go crazy, see if you can do it. Forget it. This is why it won. This is why it won.
And it is quite difficult. But, what I also did was I used the cam traction sensor. And what that sensor has is it's got a door on the front that you can open and close. Obviously, when it's completely open like this, it's got a 180 degrees that it can see movement in. But what I did was I closed it right down to a very narrow gap. And I realized that in my picture, in my dream picture, the subject has to walk exactly right there for the camera to actually go off. And that's how I actually set it up. So I was just literally focused on one spot. It had to be exactly there for the camera to be able to go off.
There we go. You ruined. I set you up there to make it even more complicated. You've now just given a percentage of your reward to Will Burrard-Lucas inadvertently. Well done, Will. Congratulations. Ben will share the trophy with you for 2 weeks of the year. It'll be fine. Okay, there we go. We could talk about this one for ages and ages and ages, but we have a deadline, and we're going to have Bella, the producer, who incidentally has also entered Wildlife Photographer of the Year. So Bella is competing directly with you, Vim. I think, good luck, Bella.
I don't have a chance. I don't have a chance.
Not a chance. Win it for the team, Bella. Win it for the team. Okay, let's tell the viewers and listeners all about the next amazing shot, because I love this shot of yours. Tell everyone about it.
So the next picture is of a leopard that's catching a springbuck, and this photograph was taken in Etosha, I think about 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. And these pictures that I'm showing you guys today are not necessarily always the pictures that I'm going to hang on my wall, but these are ones that mark very important points in my life and very, very important chapters in my wildlife photography. And I think this picture, it's sort of one of those moments where it dawned on me how important it is to know animal behavior. I'd been following this leopard for about 3 days, and she was very, very hungry. And, she was trying to hunt anything that she could see, anything from squirrels to birds. Wasn't successful in anything, but she was working in this open area, and there was a lot of springbuck action. The springbuck were rutting at that time of year. And they were so preoccupied with fighting with each other that they would walk up and down, and she would lay in ambush. And I knew that understanding the animal's behavior is going to help me come up with this shot that I'm looking for. And I figured this out over, like I said, about a 3-day period. I would leave the camp in the morning, rush down, and I would just sit and observe it. But she eventually became so comfortable with my vehicle, she would often, during the middle of the day, come and lay underneath my vehicle to escape the heat of the day. And on the actual day that this happened, there was another guy that was trying to do the same as me. I think his name was Hendrik. He was in another vehicle next to me, etc. And this leopard had been stalking up to a bunch of springbuck and gave an attempt. They all ran away. Hendrik came up to me and said, "This cat doesn't know what she's doing. She's too inexperienced, and we need to, I'm just not going to waste my time here anymore." While he was talking to me, I was looking down the road, and I see the springbuck probably about 300 meters down the road, walking across the road straight towards me. And about 100 meters down from me, I saw another group of springbuck rams. And I realized that this springbuck had to walk down to these springbuck 100 meters behind me. And in between, there's a leopard. So I called Hendrik back. I said to him, "Hendrik, come park your vehicle right here in front of me, right next to me, and watch the kill." Those were my words. And it's the first time that I sat there and I planned everything to the team. I put a new battery into my camera. I put a new fresh memory card into my camera. I put my camera onto the maximum frame rate. And I chose a shutter that's nice and fast that would freeze the moment. I even planned where the cat would catch the springbuck and position myself in that spot. And it's the first time in my life when I've ever predicted anything, and it worked exactly the way I said it would. So that's why it's such an important picture for me, is because you spend years in the field working. I mean, people don't understand as a photographer, as a wildlife photographer, how much time, how much effort goes into trying to photograph something that's really special. And the time and the effort that goes into getting those shots, it's not just sitting there and waiting for stuff to happen. You have to plan your picture, and you have to think what the animals are thinking. You have to observe way beyond just what's happening. And this is what I walked away from with all that knowledge and all that time spent working with wildlife, working with animals that are hungry and going for it,
I mean, there's two things that really get me on this. The body shape of the leopard, which is weird because it looks like it's suddenly evolved into like a small leopard person who's like standing up and just grabbed it as it kind of like a rugby tackle. But the other thing is there's blood on the leg as well. Did it grab it there first, grab it somewhere else? What were the other frames before and after? You said you had a fast frame rate.
Yes, they are probably about 100 to 150 frames to tell the whole story. Each of them perfect. I mean, it's just so difficult to choose the winning picture eventually. But this cat actually went and lay down flat in the grass, and the springbuck literally walked into the leopard. The leopard jumped up and the springbuck turned, and it literally grabbed by one claw, grabbed that back leg and held on and swung herself around. And this leopard is tiny, and she's literally just holding on, and she's grabbing the springbuck, and it had no chance. There's no ways it was getting away.
I love the tail coming across as well, fitting perfectly framed between the two legs as well. It's an amazing shot. Did you come from a guiding background? A lot of photographers work as guides, in like a Sabi Sands or something like that. They work in there and they start to take up photography, but you went straight into wildlife photography as a passion and then turned that into the photo hosting business, didn't you?
That's right. Yeah. So I was primarily a wildlife photographer, and obviously, it's not that easy making ends meet as a wildlife photographer. Back in the day, we would rely on stock agencies to sell a lot of our stuff. We would rely on magazines, picking up articles from us, etc. But that became a lot more difficult. So you have to keep on reinventing yourself. So being a wildlife photographer in the modern day and age, with all your new computers and cameras, etc., it's not the easiest thing, right? So I started, offering my skills as a selling point to people. Guys, if you join me, I will try and predict a leopard catching a springbuck, and I'll try and put you in the front row seat to photograph exactly what I'm going to be trying to photograph as well. So that was always the mindset behind becoming a photographic host, trying to get my clients the best possible picture that they can get, so much better than they would do on their own, for instance.
Nothing substitutes time in the bush. You've got to be out there. You've got to do it. You've got to learn it, because every sighting and every experience is different. And in knowing how to react, it's thousands of hours not getting the shot to get the shot. There's no shortcuts. I think you said to me once, back in the day, you would make 90% of your income from stock and 10% from guiding. And very quickly it switched. Did you say that to me? Is that a big quote?
Yeah. No, 100%. It would definitely be something that then I would have said. Stock photography used to be, a very lucrative, not lucrative. We were never really wealthy, but you could keep the wolf away from the door. You certainly can't do that anymore these days. Even selling stories to magazines. Most magazines don't even make it these days. Everything's online and everything's social media driven, etc. So it becomes difficult to try and sell something that a lot of people perceive as free. Why would you sell photography? Because it cost you nothing to do, right? You just had to pick up your camera, press the button, and there we go. And it cost you nothing. So I think what's worked well for me in the last couple of years since COVID are my fine art sales. I've been selling a lot of wildlife prints, which has been great. That sort of picked up that gap where stock photography used to be for me. And in fact, in some months, I actually do way better out of my art sales than I do out of, selling tours. In fact, a lot of times, because sometimes you don't fill your tours, then the tour runs at a loss, blah, blah, blah. You have so many problems and headaches when it comes to that. I'm sure you know the whole thing there as well, Toby. But I think selling the wildlife art has picked up a lot of that slack for me and made it a bit more lucrative for me again,
Brilliant. Okay, we're going to take a break now. Whilst we're taking a break, if you are watching this on your phone, your tablet, your computer, or anything, please make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episode. And when we come back, I'm going to do a little bit of a giveaway. We're going to do a prize giveaway. So we'll see you in a minute and we'll be right back. Thank you. Welcome back to part 2 of the Pangolin podcast with my guest today, Wim van der Heever. So before we had the break, I said I was going to do a giveaway. And so I thought, we've got these new t-shirts, which explains what happens when you go on safari. You eat, sleep, shoot, repeat. I'm very proud of this t-shirt, and I was going to give it away. But Wim, in his infinite wisdom, has said, hey, why don't we make this a little bit more interesting? And I said, well, that's very interesting, Wim. What did you have in mind? So brace yourselves, everybody. We're going to leave a link in the description down below, which will take you to a place where we're going to ask you a question about one of the images we've shown today. Then we're going to do a lucky draw, and the winner is going to win said t-shirt in the size of your choice. And they get to go to Wim's website, wait for it, choose any image they want. Wim will then print it, he will sign it, and we will send it to you. Thank you, Wim. I mean, it's an amazing gift. Thank you so much. It's super cool. Are you sure?
Yeah, absolutely sure. It would be my pleasure to do that. It's been fun. So why not make somebody else somewhere in the world, happy as well,
That's very generous of you, Wim. I really appreciate that. So yeah, as I said, we're going to leave a question. You've also got to give us a thumbs up. That's another thing. If you haven't given us a thumbs up, I'm not going to let you win. It's free to enter, and then we'll pick a winner, and they will win a t-shirt and a signed image from Wim. So yeah, very cool, Wim. Thank you very much. Let's move straight on to your third image. Please describe this image.
Yeah, so this is a picture that I call Leap of Lechwe, and it's photographed in the Okavango Delta, Botswana. And it is 3 Lechwe that are jumping across a small waterway that sort of separates 2 islands. And you've got the male ram in the background, and then the females that are actually jumping over the camera, which is right on the water surface. So another one of those special images that means a lot to me, just because of the difficulty and the technicalities that it took to try and get this picture again.
So how did you get the Lechwe to jump towards you? This is what I want to know.
Yeah. That's the interesting story about this picture. So it's photographed in the Okavango Delta, and I was working in Duba Plains at the time, where the lions catch the buffalo and they go crazy, etc. Except that when the lions do catch the buffalo, that for the next 3-4 days, there's nothing that happens, which sort of leaves a lot of empty time for a photographer. So you need to think out of the box. And during the course of my time working at Duba Plains, I realized that the Lechwe would go out onto these islands and sleep out on the islands at night. And when I used to come past those islands in the morning, I would watch them jumping back onto the main islands. And it sort of stuck in my mind that I wonder if there's not an opportunity to try and put a camera on that one small spot where I see them jumping every morning. And I photographed this picture with a 14mm lens, my friend. So it's not a 70-200 or something with a long lens. And I stuck the camera in the water. Obviously, there's crocodiles, there's lions, all that around, or whatever. You have to be careful. Plus, I have to then trigger this camera and not be anywhere close to those Lechwe, because if the Lechwe see the vehicle, they just move off. So you have to put your camera down in the water, and you have to go several hundred meters away and sit there with what I was using at that point, a Pocket Wizard version 2, which had the longest range that you could still trigger this. So bearing in mind, I don't know whether I'm triggering the camera at that point or not. I'm just pressing the button, hoping that it's photographing whatever's jumping over it. And I'm sitting there with binoculars watching the Lechwe come up to that point and then jumping across and hoping it's, anywhere close to where my camera is. So no camera trapping, no sensors. It's literally me and a pair of binos sitting there watching and hoping that I'm getting the scene. And one of those moments again where when you go up to the camera afterwards, after you've seen all the Lechwe running past or whatever, and you go and pick your camera up and it's just none, got nothing. Oh, yeah, there we go. This is the shot. And this is probably one of the first pictures that I photographed that is really out the box for me. It marked a turning point in my career, because I think after this, every single place I went into, I always kept on thinking, how can I do something different? How can I change the scene up? What can I do to make this the next level picture?
And the camera you were using for this, are you still Nikon then? Still Nikon now?
Yes, I am still using my Nikon system. If I remember correctly, it was the Nikon D3S, and it was submerged on a ground pod mounted on a ball head. So I had to find exactly the right spot where the camera was just sort of above the water, and I could set it up in that exact scene that you've got there. I would have preferred to have the reflection the whole reflection of the Lechwe, but it's still pretty cool the way it is at the moment,
No, I mean, it would have been worse if there was no separation from the leaping one to the running one. So we'll take it. It's fine. There's a reflection. I mean, there was a real danger that this Lechwe was going to run straight over your camera and just straight in the water. And it would have been, the last photograph would have just been blue sky as it fell over and then nothing. And how were you doing this? Obviously, this is manual focus, and you pre-focusing at a certain point in just ahead of you.
Yeah, that's right. So I was manually focusing probably about 3-4 meters in front of the camera, but quite a big aperture. It was about f11, f13, somewhere around there. Just give it a nice, healthy depth of field. It did mean that when I set up the camera pre-dawn, because you're trying to get the camera there as early as possible before the Lechwe start running across, so that they don't see you. Because the minute they see you, there's no way they're not going to cross there. So you need to get there sort of in the dark. You need to predict what the settings are going to be like when they start jumping across, right? And obviously dawn hours, you need to give the shutter time to ramp up as the light comes up during the course of the morning. So shot on AV, because I knew exactly what my ISO should be. I knew exactly what my aperture should be. I was happy for my shutter to start effectively capturing the movement from about, if I remember correctly, at about 6 a.m. in the morning. And at that point, the shutter speed was already around 1,000 of a second. So everything off that was just a bonus. And I think this ramped up to about 8,000 of a second when this picture eventually then went off.
So it's interesting. You mentioned earlier on that you were at Duba Plains, and this is where Derek Joubert filmed Relentless Enemies, wasn't it? Which was the lions versus the buffalo and the interaction that was going on. Didn't something happen with the pride and the dynamic changed and they didn't hunt the buffaloes again? Do you know?
Yeah, so the last time we left there, sort of late 2015, somewhere around there, the buffalo weren't coming into the area as much as they used to. So that huge, massive interaction wasn't happening the way it was the preceding 10 years when Derek was filming all those magnificent scenes. I think a lot of people went there afterwards and weren't coming back with the same results. And it's an expensive place to go to, you know. I think there are easier places to get intense behavior like that, but I'm not always the one saying that intense behavior is the be all and end all of photography. There's a lot more to great storytelling. We can include environment. We can include a lot more to the picture than, you know, just intense behavior.
And I think Lechwe, people go to the Delta, they love photographing Lechwe. They are such cool creatures running through the water, and it tells such a cool story. Okay, let's go on to your fourth image, please. I think we know who it is, but tell us about it, why you chose it.
So this is a picture of Craig. He's probably the most photographed big elephant in Africa. He's an elephant that I've worked extensively with over the last couple of years, and I've been there several seasons working with him for weeks on end. I would say he's probably the only animal that I ever really felt I had a connection with. So let me just explain a little bit of context behind Craig as well, before everybody goes out and says, yeah, you shouldn't be, you know, photographing and spending so much time with it. This is a community elephant, right? He doesn't live inside the National Park of Amboseli. So he lives in the communities. And while you are photographing this animal, there are little girls walking past you, going to the school. There's a guy coming past on his bicycle. And you see Craig with these people all day long. And we photographed him because he's the one elephant that is so tolerant towards people. He sees people every day, you know, and it was a huge loss for me to lose him this year, you know, when the news came out. I'm leaving for Amboseli now in literally 2 weeks from now, and I was going to be with him for the next 6 weeks after that. So losing Craig was obviously a huge thing for me, and it left a profound sadness and a big void in my photographic life and in my personal life as well. But this specific picture that you see here is very important for me because it's the one picture that I used to commission a bronze of Craig as well. So a very good friend of mine is called Badney van der Vyver, and he's a bronze sculptor. And he made that exact picture that you see there, he made into a bronze. And that bronze is in my office. And this is the one pose that I always look at Craig, and I always remember him for that regal moment that he just stood there proud and strong.
For those of you who don't know, Craig passed away. It was at the end of last year, the beginning of this year.
Yep. Yeah. So beginning of this year.
Do you know what it is? It's very, very sad to lose Craig, but he died of old age. And he lived an amazing life. It wasn't a poacher's bullet. It wasn't a snare. It wasn't poison. He made it. And that, I think, is symbolic of the success of anti-poaching in Kenya. We all know death and taxes. Well, it doesn't tax, you don't tax elephants, but it's going to happen sooner or later. And the fact that he lived to die of natural causes, I think, is something that should be celebrated.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not one to live my life on social media, but I did say that it's a profound loss for me, but I do celebrate a good life in Craig. And you see everybody's emotional pour-outs about this elephant, and you realize how important he was, how many people he actually reached, and how many people he touched. And, you know, it just speaks volumes for what a magnificent animal he was. I mean, he never showed aggression. He never, ever showed intolerance. He never, ever made you feel uncomfortable. You know, I used to always try and photograph Craig with a 70-200mm lens, a bit of a longer lens. I don't need to stand on top of the elephant or whatever. I want to stand a little bit further away. Well, I tell you what, over the last couple of years, if I'm in a big open area and I go and stand on the opposite side, Craig walks straight up to me and comes stand right next to me. And that's why you sort of feel this amazing connection towards this animal, because he would literally walk up to you and come stand with you. I mean, it was just magnificent. You know, he was really beautiful. And like I said, you'll be sorely missed, my friend.
What I particularly liked about this shot is actually the pose of his head, because he's got these tusks and they were, remind me again, how heavy are the tusks? It's huge, isn't it?
They're 100 pounders. So it's about 130 pounds or whatever. Yeah.
And so normally when he's walking towards you, his head's down. These are bloody heavy things. But what I particularly like about this shot is the posture. He's up and he's got his head up and his tusks are up, and it's regal. It's a really, really beautiful shot. And it's a lovely tribute to a lovely animal. When are you off to? You're off to Amboseli, and you're just doing Amboseli. You going anywhere else in Kenya at the same time?
I fly on the 5th of February, and then I basically spend the month in Amboseli, and then I'm back to Tanzania after that. And I'll be spending most of my time, in fact, all my time in the Serengeti, almost up until June this year.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, if you're interested in joining Vim on safari, I will leave a link in the description down below to his website. And also, Vim on occasion comes to the Chobe and hangs out with us. So there we go. Double whammy. Come with Vim to the Chobe. You'll be making us both very happy. Right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to look at the image that Vim chose, taken by another photographer that he maybe wishes he'd taken himself. See you in a minute. Welcome back to the final part of the Pangolin podcast with my guest today, Wim van den Heever. This is the part of the show where we've asked Wim to choose an image taken by another wildlife photographer that he respects, an image maybe he wishes he had taken himself. So, Wim, would you please like to introduce this image, describe what's going on, because it's extraordinary, and tell us who took it?
Yeah, so this is a picture of a polar bear that's submerged underwater, and it's photographed by Paul Nicklen. And this picture has always haunted me. It's a very old picture. And in fact, I think it used to be the background, if I remember correctly, of my Windows 95 or whatever, one of those. And I used to look at this picture and I always used to sit there and admire it. I never, ever could understand how the photographer did this because it's underwater. And I do a lot of scuba diving as well. And to get your water surface that flat with that crystal clear reflection in it, and to get that posture and everything exactly the way it is, it's just too magnificent. It just used to haunt me. You know, how did Paul get this picture? And he's subsequently explained it to me. He had a pole camera, he stuck the camera underwater. But this picture left such a profound impression on me as a young wildlife photographer starting off. And it made me so insecure by choosing my career as a wildlife photographer, thinking that, you know, I'll never be able to get to that position where I could compete with the likes of Paul Nicklen, because his body of work is just so magnificent. I do rate him as probably, you know, certainly his polar work as probably the best I've ever seen. It's hauntingly beautiful. And it's not just, you know, a point and shoot situation. It's somebody that spent a lot of time and a lot of effort into getting to a position where you could photograph a subject, and especially a subject like a polar bear underwater with those conditions. Even long before I knew Paul in person, I would look at that picture and just go like, oh, I just can't believe how beautiful that picture is, you know.
You mentioned it was like Windows 95 or something like that. This was taken a very long time ago and on film. So he didn't even have the luxury of digital afterwards saying, oh my God, I got the shot. He'd have to wait until he's gone and seen it, developed on a contact sheet or something. That must have been a moment as well for him.
Yeah.
And obviously he's on a boat. He's not, I don't think he's in the water. He's got a pole, taking a photograph. There are regulations now. You can't go this close to a polar bear anymore. This is a shot that isn't going to happen again. But it's one of those shots that will live on in mythology, won't it? As being, well, that was a shot that's probably never going to happen. Nothing similar like that is ever going to happen.
Certainly, I wouldn't advise people to go scuba diving with polar bears. You know, that's the one big animal that's going to hunt and eat you, right? So you need to know what you're doing when you're working with them. You know, but Paul spent all his life in the polar regions. He's a trained professional. He knows these animals backwards. The guy knows his story, right? So there's a lot more behind the picture than just meets the eye. It's not just any tourist walking up, grabbing a camera and taking a picture, you know?
Yeah, it's an extraordinary image. He's an extraordinary photographer. When we asked him, he said, can we use your photograph on Vim's episode of the podcast? And Bella got quite the thrill that he replies, oh, I got an email from Paul Nicklen. It's like, get him on the show, get him on the show. So Paul, if you're watching, you're invited. Come on the show. You can tell us all about this. Vim, we run out of time, but before you go, we always ask our guests the one big question. So I said at the top of the show, you are going to live in a humble dwelling somewhere in the world, but you get to choose where that humble dwelling is. So where are you going to live photographing in perpetuity?
You know, it's a difficult question, but if there's one place I can tell you that is eerily beautiful for me, where if I could just build a house there and just escape everything, it would probably be, you know, that eastern sector of the Serengeti, those big, beautiful open plains, the rolling hills, those magnificent koppies, and then you have those big predators that hang out on those big koppies. It's so beautiful. I mean, and I sit there, and every year when I leave that area, I find myself just breaking down in tears because I'm so profoundly moved by the place. I want to just live my life there, and I just want to see these animals every day, and I want to experience that peacefulness that I feel when I'm on those magnificent plains, next to those magnificent cats on those big rocks. If I could build a little house there overlooking all this, I would be very happy.
So if you're in a few years' time, if you're driving through the eastern part of the Serengeti, there's a small house there, you know who lives there. It's fine. It's Vim. We made all his dreams come true. Vim, thank you so much for making time to come on the show. I know your life must have been a whirlwind since the wildlife photography announcement. Then we had Christmas and New Year, and now you're off on safari again. It's been a joy having you here. I've had great fun chatting to you. And thank you so much for the generous giveaway. So before I forget, there will be a link in the description to a place where you can go and answer the question that Vim and I will go away and have a think about the question we should ask. Can't be too easy. And you can answer that and win one of his prints off his website and this amazing t-shirt. So Vim, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you very much, Toby. It's been wonderful to see you again. It's been years, my friend. We should do this more often. Thank you very much. Like I said, thank you.
Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Pangolin podcast. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. As always, we'd love to hear your comments and feedback, so please do leave them in the comments below. If you are an audio listener, we'd love it if you could give us a star rating or a quick review. Thank you. And if you don't want to miss the next episode or any of our other wildlife photography videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Finally, don't forget to sign up to the Pangolin Photo Safari's Friday Focus newsletter. You can do that by heading over to pangolinphoto.com or scan the QR code on your screen now. I look forward to seeing you on a Pangolin Photo Safari soon, and all that's left for me to say is that the Pangolin podcast was hosted by me, Toby Jermyn, and produced and edited by Bella Falk. Thank you.